Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Esoteric Atlanta. Of course, my name is Bryce. This is a bit of an impromptu video, something that has been heavy on my heart and very worrisome. I didn't think I was going to film about this today. I thought I was going to be doing Spencer Pratt filming today, which I think we're going to do tomorrow. If you guys aren't familiar, Spencer Pratt has become like the hero we did not see coming here in America. If you're not from America, which I know a lot of my audience isn't, I am going to probably be filming more about that tomorrow. I'm just doing a little bit of research in order to give you guys who are not from America some background information so that you understand what is happening and why it's such a big deal with this ex-reality star Spencer Pratt over in California. If you follow me over on TikTok at Esoteric Atlanta, I have reposted a lot of stuff about the whole Spencer Pratt situation with Gavin Newsom, the governor. So you can go ahead and check that out, but I'll probably be doing a bigger filming on that tomorrow. I also want to apologize. I know I said this last week, but it never fails, you guys. Every time we have Mercury retrograde, something happens where I cannot pull up the names of my patrons to put in the opening credits. I don't know what it is. It's always Mercury retrograde. I don't know if other people who have Patreon experience this as well in Mercury retrograde. I did notice that my iTunes on my computer this morning, I was setting a playlist for a class, and I noticed that my iTunes were not connecting to the homepage too. So it might just be a computer issue, which I'll have my boyfriend look at that when he gets home, because frankly, I'm not very good at computers, believe it or not. Um, but nonetheless, with that being said, I really appreciate our patrons and our producers. I just want you guys to know that even though I can't roll call your name because I can't get your names to pull up right now, I absolutely really appreciate you guys. All right, so what I wanted to get into, you guys, last week I talked a lot about the new Shiny Happy People season two, which got into teen media. I did a very long video where I talked about all three episodes, now available on Amazon Prime. Season two to me was far more, it hit home far more than season one. As I said in that episode, season one was more about the IBLP, the Institute and Basic Life Principles, the more fundamentalist or outwardly fundamentalist group of evangelical Christians here in America, and focusing on the Duggars and all that kind of stuff, which a lot of us in America especially because it's based in America, who grew up evangelical, Protestant, some of that IBLP stuff might have rubbed off on us, but a lot of it didn't. With the IBLP with season one, they talked a lot about being conservative in your dress, like wearing long dresses, growing your hair out, not showing your knees, not wearing pants, and that just is not what a lot of us grew up with as, Protestants, me specifically, a lot of you guys. I grew up Presbyterian. My parents practiced birth control. We wore bikinis. There was no, my parents were Christian, and my mother can quote the Bible like nobody's business. And we went to church every Sunday and every Wednesday, but they were also very secular too. My parents were also with it. They were hip. They are, in the South, we value our drinks. So they were very social people. They loved, both of my parents had a big love for music. So to my sister and me, we listened to all the rock bands of the 70s, which was my parents' generation. I always laugh because for a long time I thought my dad wrote the song Hotel California because he would play it on the guitar all the time when we were kids. He had all sorts of guitars, electric guitars, acoustical guitars. And it was a while before I realized that that was the Eagles. It wasn't my dad. So, when we had Davy Jackson on the show for season one, I talked about how, they do courting where they don't, they only kiss their husband at the altar. It's very controlled. And my mother was opposite. She would encourage my sister and I to go out there and date as often as we can, as many different guys as we could, just to figure out what we wanted in the long run for a husband. And so there were a lot of opposing, even though my parents were conservative Christians, there was a lot of opposing stuff from season one. But season two really kind of picked up where a lot of us in the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s, kind of that combination of Christianity and secular belief. And so that's why I think it hit home a lot with the season two more than season one. I was talking to Liz Boltz. The Boltz siblings are going to be coming on the channel. I'm so excited. They were some of my favorite people in the documentary. I feel like they have such a unique way of talking about their experiences with Teen Mania and Ron Luce, and they handle it with humor, which I think in some ways shows a lot of healing. Obviously, their father is Ray Boltz. I believe that's Ray, Mr. Boltz, as I would have called him as a kid. He was an evangelical celebrity singer who ends up coming out of the closet and how that happened. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because that's been really heavy on my heart. And I just wanted to kind of talk to you guys about it and see what you guys think. Because I think a lot of us, I mean, obviously, all of us are unique. We have, differing views on some things, but similar views on other things. And as Catherine, my friend Catherine always says, as long as your moral compass is the same, that's really all that matters. And so I wanted to kind of like one thing that's really bothered me, and I say this in a big deep dive, that these people give conservatives like myself a bad name. I have said to you guys many times that politically I am conservative because I want to conserve the Constitution. I want to conserve the Constitution. I am not conservative as far as like my lifestyle. I'm very liberal in my lifestyle. I'm kind of just live and let live, which is basically what the Constitution is, right? The Constitution in a nutshell says two things. We don't believe in a monarchy as Americans. We don't think that there's such thing as a royal bloodline, and live and let live, y'all. Just live and let live. Basically the Constitution is like you can do whatever you want, but just make sure you're following, don't unalive people, don't steal, all that kind of stuff, and you're good, bro. You're good. Well, in Shiny Happy People, they get deep into this super conservative faction of the Christian faith, where they are working really, really hard to turn America into a Christian country. Now, they will word it differently. They will confuse people and gaslight people and make people believe that America needs to return to being a Christian country. And this is what really, really bothers me because propaganda exists on both sides of the aisle, on the left and the right. And if we look at the extremes, like most of us are in the middle, like I'm conservative in the middle. I'm very much moderate, right? But if we look at the extremes on both sides, the extreme of the left would be like socialism, communism. The extreme on the right would be like fascism. But if you look at it as a circle, they kind of circle into each other. So fascism, communism, socialism all kind of merge because some of this, it's total control. It's absolute total control. And that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. And it's so concerning because America has never been a Christian country. That's the propaganda I'm talking about. When you see Dr. James Dobson, I think that was his name, he talks about that. No, it was never a Christian country. America, in our Declaration of Independence, our founding fathers spoke about a creator. They absolutely talked about we have certain unalienable rights given to us by our creator. Now, with that being said, I think what people need to understand that every religion believes in a creator. Every religion has a God, right? So when the founding fathers speak about our creator giving us rights, they're not necessarily adhering to the Christian belief. Now, is our country Judeo-Christian influenced? Absolutely, because when the founding fathers were settling this country, all of them, Europe is very much heavily influenced by Christianity. So just by default, they're very much influenced by this faith, but they made it very clear that we're not a theocracy. Theocracy, in my opinion, is no different than fascism or communism. There's no difference. Just some words are interchanged. It's the same type of control. And our founding fathers, when they settled this country, the European ones of European descent, so my ancestors are included in that. For most people, white people will say Europeans of the European descent, Americans like myself. For those of us who have had family here for hundreds and hundreds of years, so I think my first batch of ancestors, if I remember correctly, came over in 1647. And that was one of my German lines. And they came over in 1647, and this is according to the mainstream history that we have. There is a book out there called The Stroms of South Carolina. That was their last name. Strom is how it's spelled now. It was Wunstrom back then, Vunstrum, which means by a stream. So there they lived obviously by a stream. My German, one of my, I have lots of German lines, but this one particular German line. My grandmother, my mom's mom, my maternal grandmother was born Maxine Strom. So she was of that Strom, which changed over time, Strom, the spelling changed. Her first cousin is the late Strom Thurmond. So Strom Thurmond got, like me, Bryce is my mother's maiden name. Strom was given his mother's maiden name. My grandmother and Strom Thurmond, as cousins, communicated a lot. I actually, when I was born, he sent my parents gifts. We have a nice book set that I colored in as a kid, given to us by Strom Thurmond. But because Strom Thurmond became the longest running senator, he's no longer living. My grandmother is no longer living either. But because he is the longest running senator in the United States, there's a lot of books written about him. And one of them is called The Stroms of South Carolina. And so it tracks the Strom family line, the ancestral line. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because I'm making a point with this whole faith thing, right? So the Stroms were from, according to this book, my ancestors, Strom Thurmond's, our mutual ancestors, were from northern Germany, what we call now northern Germany, kind of like that Prussia, Holy Roman Empire area. Yeah. And they were Lutheran. They follow the teachings of Martin Luther. And so they were practicing a new form of what we call Protestantism. They were very much inclined to Martin Luther's teachings. Again, that became known as Lutheranism. My grandmother, Maxine Strom, who, my grandmother, so 300 something years later, she grew up a Lutheran, still very Germanic in the way that her religion, she ended up becoming a Presbyterian when she married my grandfather, but she grew up a Lutheran. So Germany and France, these two countries, obviously country lines are imaginary. They don't exist, right? We just make them exist. And then even if you look at things like 23andMe, they often put Germany and French kind of together, like German and French ancestral, Germanic ancestral. So you see, if you have both German and French ancestors, you kind of see that both light up, and then it shows you on the map where they found you. My family, both sides of my family, very Germanic looking on both sides. Both sides of my family are very blonde hair, blue eyed, so that makes a lot of sense to me. But the Edict of Nantes, I think Nantes is how you say it, Nantes, was signed by King Henry IV of France in 1598. Now, I've done a story on King Henry IV of France, which I'll tag it down below, and it was a decree granting religious freedom to Huguenots, French Protestants. It aimed to end the French War of Religions by establishing a fragile peace between Catholics and Protestants. While it allowed for the practice of Protestantism in certain areas, it also reaffirmed Catholicism as the state religion. The Edict of Nantes was later revoked by Louis XIV in 1685, leading to a renewed persecution and immigration of Huguenots. So this is what actually inspired my ancestors to move to the New World, America. Now they came over in 1647. And Louis XIV had totally revoked it in 1685. But we know, look at our world around us today. We know that things build up and build momentum before the final blow is pulled. And because of France and Germany being like right beside each other, these edicts often affected Germanic people. Now, I do have a lot of French ancestors as well who were also Huguenots, but that's a story for a different day. I'm using this particular line as an example because they came over so early. So we have this whole book that describes their journey over from northern Germany all the way into what was called Charlestown, South Carolina. That is now Charleston, South Carolina, which is where my mother is from. So they stayed in that area for a very long time. The Stroms did. When they got to Charlestown, these German immigrants did not speak any English, but they picked that area to start over again because it was an English stronghold against Catholicism. And so they felt safe there. Now, what was happening in the War of Religions and in the Protestant Reformation is very, very, very turbulent very bloody. You know, we had people who were being decapitated, we had burnings, we had um, the Inquisition was, you know, we had that in Spain. We had Saint Bartholomew's Massacre, which happened with King Henry IV and his wife. I mean, this is a very we think about the Middle East today and how violent it is in the Middle East. That was also happening in Europe during this time. Now, this was not even different religions, right? This was the same Bible, the same belief system, just different opinions on different belief systems. And I think it's hard for us as Westerners to because we've lived in such a tolerant world for our lifetime. You know, in Europe and America, people can believe whatever they want. It's fine. No one cares. So it's hard for us to understand how severe this was for our ancestors all over Europe. England as well. I mean, Bloody Mary, she got her name because of how many people she offed because they weren't Catholic, right? So this was a huge issue. This was a very scary issue for Europeans. And a lot of them, and I've said this before, or I've said this before, when you think about our founding fathers who immigrated to America, a lot of our ancestors were not super wealthy. Some of them came over as indentured servants. They gave everything up. The world they knew, the hometown they knew, the language they knew, the culture they knew. They were so desperate for protection that they were willing to risk going to a completely new world. And if you know anything about Charleston, South Carolina, Charlestown, as it was called back then, it is hot, it is humid, there was malaria, there was yellow fever, it was muggy. Where my ancestors were from, these particular ancestors were from northern Germany. The weather was very different, the climate was very different. So they had to come down to a very new world, really a new world, right? Like a new ecosystem. They don't speak English. They have to learn how to adapt to the humidity and the swampland. I mean, this is a lot of swamps. It's the low country. They have to find work. When the first census was taken in Charlestown, that they when they lived there, they were not included in the census because they didn't speak English. But yet they were helping. They got jobs helping build the city. In fact, now in Charleston, there is certain plaques somewhere. I've been told, I've tried to find it when I'm in Charleston, but I've never found it, where they've actually dedicated a certain road to the Stroms because they were never taken in the census, but they really helped build the city. And then, of course, over time, their younger generations learn to speak English and really immerse themselves into this new American colony. So much so that these poor German immigrants who were just looking for a place to practice religious freedom without being, you know, burned at the stake, because they chose their ancestor ended up being a senator. Like I often think about our ancestors and if they could see us now, like what's become of us now, and how powerful we've become when they really took a gamble and just came here just to try to be safe. And so I bring that to your attention because that's a very common story for a lot of the original settlers, the European settlers, is they were building a country. They were coming here because they were desperate. There was incredible bloodshed happening in their motherland. They were leaving their friends, their families, what they knew behind to start over again. This is serious. And it's not like they could get on a boat and go back. A lot of them gave everything they had. And the boat journey itself was like, what, 3 months? And it was just amazing if you even survived the boat journey, right? You're not living, it's not the Royal Caribbean, right? You're sitting in your own waste. You're with a bunch of other people sick, trying to make it for hope for a new beginning. So our founding fathers knew this. A lot of our founding fathers probably had some of the same stories in their family's line. They literally did not want, they knew that all of these people had run to this country for freedom. So they wouldn't be micromanaged by their government, by their monarchy about what and how they could believe in God. And so the founding fathers made it very clear that the citizens of this new country, they had just fought a revolution. The citizens of this new country We're going to have freedom of religion. They also, for the English, those of us, I have a lot of English descent as well. A lot of us do. I think about like King Henry VIII. He pulled away from the Roman Catholic Church simply so he could marry Anne Boleyn and made himself head of the Church of England. Our founding fathers did not want that to happen. Our founding fathers did not want our government to use religion to get what they want and put the people through stress. And so it was very important to our founding fathers that we have certain rights: freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to protect ourselves, freedom to own land, freedom of religion. That as long as the citizens of this country were following the common law, which common law is don't steal, don't unalive somebody, as long as their religion was not forcing any type of coercion or harm onto an unwilling participant, then you can believe whatever you want to believe or not believe whatever. You don't have to have a religion if you don't want a religion in this country. And to me, this is so important because our ancestors knew. They just came from that. They knew what would happen, what could happen if we made America associated with one religion. They knew what would happen. It had already happened. And if you hear Ravi barking, he's barking. Um, and so they made it very clear. Now, when we look at like communism, they take all religion out, right? Like in the USSR, they took down all the churches. And so the government becomes the God at that point. And so they didn't want that to happen either. They wanted the church and the state to be separate. The state should be run by the people for the sake and the health and the happiness of the people, right? Make sure we're not stealing from each other, that we're able to not go into any type of tyrannical rule, that the people are in charge of this. But then religion was separate. And the government's job, the government run by the people's job, was to protect freedom of religion, to protect people's ability to believe what they want to believe as long as they are not hurting somebody else. Now, this is a hot topic right now, and I do understand because I do know in Islam there are some extremists. I get that. I totally get that. Look at the Middle East. Look what's going on in the Middle East with their theocracy. But don't be so arrogant as to not realize that there are also extremists in Christianity. All right? We have extremists in Christianity who want to follow the Old Testament. The Old Testament is full of a bunch of really bad ideas. Really bad ideas, right? And that's not okay. So when we have like with Shiny Happy People, where they talk about this insurrection into government from the extreme right to try to bring Christianity back to America, it was never in America to begin with. Okay, it was freedom of religion to begin with. So what they're trying to do is just like the extreme left, they're trying to destroy the Constitution, rip that Constitution up and make us a theocracy. If you don't think what is happening in the Middle East could happen here under a theocracy, you are sorely mistaken. If you don't think what happened in the War of Religions a few hundred years ago can happen here under a theocracy, you are sorely mistaken. And I promise you, if you're somebody who wants a theocracy, be careful what you wish for. Because the violence that you support will one day turn on you too. Will one day heed my word, will one day turn on you too. It's crazy studying some of these extreme right belief systems. One of the guys wants to strip women of the right to vote because of the Bible. It's bananas. And so I'm begging you as Americans to understand that we were never a Christian country. Never. Just because our founding fathers might have identified with being Christian does not mean that our country is Christian. They were very clear. If they wanted us to be a theocracy, they would have established that in the Constitution. But in the Constitution, they established that we all have freedom of religion. If you want to be a Muslim, be a Muslim. Just don't hurt other people. Just do your prayers and do everything yourself without hurting other people. Follow the common law. If you want to be a fundamentalist Christian, be a fundamentalist Christian, but don't hurt other people. Follow the common law. If you want to be Jewish, be Jewish. If you want to be an atheist, be atheist, a Buddhist, a Hindu. It doesn't matter because you have that right here in this country. And even though I might not like some of those religious beliefs, as long as you are not hurting other people, I'll defend your right to have those beliefs. For me, myself, I don't identify with a religion, but I have a very strong belief in God. And I can be that way here in this country. That's how the Constitution is set up. I can find God through my yoga practice. I can find God through reading a book. I'm free to not have to be associated with a particular religion in order to celebrate my relationship with God because the Constitution grants me that. And again, that might sound silly, especially to young people, because right now in the world, as we've grown up, that's pretty much how it is in most of the world. People just don't care. It is what it is. But it has been bad before, and and I know we laugh about history here because I always say history ain't nothing but gossip, which is totally true. But we also study history for a very important reason, and that is so we don't repeat the sins of the past. That we see where we failed in the past and why we failed, and we try not to repeat that again. And it is important that we hold that. And I'm asking all of the conservatives out there, regardless of what your religious belief is, you are a conservative because you want to conserve the Constitution. So let's conserve the Constitution and make sure that every single person in this country, like you, has the freedom of religion, especially if you are really big in your religious beliefs. How would you feel? Let's practice empathy here. How would you feel if a government entity came in and told you that you no longer can practice your religious beliefs the way you want to practice them? And if you continue doing that, you're going to be executed. How would that feel? So don't put that on other people. The Bible says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So when you go about your politics and we look at the Constitution again is brilliant because it lets everybody live and let live. That's basically what the Constitution is. Live and let live. Live and let live. Do we understand what that means? You're living your life how you want to live your life. You're not hurting anybody, so therefore you're letting other people live the lives that they want to live. My idea of happiness, the pursuit of happiness, as spoken about in the Declaration of Independence, might not be your idea of happiness. That's okay, because in this country, we have the freedom to pursue whatever that is for us as long as we're not hurting somebody else. As long as we're not hurting somebody else. And so if you're supporting a political party that is saying things like women should be stripped of the right to vote, you've broken the Constitution with that right there. Because the Constitution grants us all that freedom. Yeah? I heard some of these people saying in these extreme political views that want to take over our government that they want to outlaw divorce. Are you kidding me? Are you actually kidding me right now? Now, I know that divorce has gotten out of hand. I think people should take their marriage vows a little bit more seriously, but that's just my opinion. That's how I would want to live my life. I'm not married, but I'm in a long-term relationship. We take our vows very seriously, even though we've never made them before the government. How, but by going back in time, do you understand the dangers you're putting people in? And why do you care? Why do you care what somebody else is doing behind closed doors? If they're not hurting anybody else, why do you care if people are getting divorced? It's none of your business. It's none of your business. And this is what I don't understand about these extreme Christian groups that want to take over this country and put us into like a fascist theocracy. We get mad at the extreme left, rightly so. We get mad at the extreme left for being a little bit perverted. But the extreme right is also perverted. Why do you care? Why are you trying to control what somebody else does with their life? If that person is not hurting you or hurting anybody else around them, it is none of your business. It is none of your business. Whether somebody marries once in their life and has a full-on marriage or marries 10 times. And when I heard that, what that sounds like to me is men who want to control women. Men who are so insecure about their manhood that they want to try to control their wives by forcing their wives to stay, even if it gets super toxic and abusive for the wife to stay. That's what that sounds like to me. Listen up, sugar cakes. If you treat your wife well and you love her and you're kind to her, she probably won't want to leave anyway. So you've got nothing to worry about. It is, I have been so upset watching those episodes and seeing these clips because I don't follow extreme conservative groups because I don't believe in their message, right? Just like I don't follow extreme leftist groups. So to hear this and to see what they're doing to try to overhaul the Constitution, what they are doing, again, I'm going to repeat myself, but that's how we really, I just wanted to seek in. What these extreme Christian groups are doing, these extreme right groups are doing, are no different than the extreme left. They're trying to overhaul the Constitution. But I respect, this is going to sound weird, I respect the left a little bit more because at least they're being honest about it. At least they're being honest about it. The extreme right is being manipulative because they're trying to pull God into it. Your human need to control other people has nothing to do with God. They're using religion as a way to justify their abuse, to justify their need to control other people. By getting people to submit to them, they're twisting the words of God, right? It's scary, and it is going to end in an overhaul of the Constitution by the extreme right as well. We need to, if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in what our founding fathers stood for and what the American Revolution stood for, we need to protect other people's sovereignty, other people's self-governance at all cost. At all cost. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If your neighbor is a Wiccan, awesome. As long as your neighbor isn't hurting any animals, any humans, anybody else, fantastic. Let them be that because that's what the Constitution is for. So we can all live in peace, harmonious peace, while respecting each other's journey. And let me tell you something, my friends, I believe wholeheartedly, if you are comfortable with your relationship with God, meaning you have a solid relationship with God, then you will not be threatened by what other people believe. So if you are a Christian and you are comfortable with God, you won't be threatened by the fact that your friend might be a Muslim or your friend might be a Buddhist. It's not going to affect you because your deep, profound relationship with God, you will have a thorough understanding that how you celebrate that relationship with God is not how other people are going to celebrate their personal own relationship with God. It's personal. I use this example with my mother all the time. I've told this story many times. Growing up, one of my best friends growing up was Muslim. And my youth director in high school made me feel guilty because I wasn't witnessing to her and her family. And that if it'd be my fault if the apocalypse came and they went to hell because I wasn't witnessing to her. She was my friend. We had been friends since middle school. I had gone over to house to celebrate Ramadan before. My mother never, she always told me just to thank her family, thank her parents, and ask if I can help. And yes, ma'am, and no, sir. Be respectful. My very Christian mother had no problem with me going over to my friend's house and celebrating these Muslim holidays. So when I got to high school and got to youth group and my youth director was being nasty and trying to manipulate me and make me feel guilty for not ever talking to my friend about my religion, I went home to my mom and I cried to my mom and I said, Mom, I said their names, are they going to go to hell? Like, is this? And my mother said, absolutely not. She said to me, she goes, Bryce, I'll never forget what she said. My mother said, Bryce, I don't pretend to know the mysteries of God, but I know one thing for certain. Your friend and her family are going to be right there in heaven with us. Do not talk to them. She was very forceful. Do not go over there and talk to them about our religion. Respect them because that's their religion and you love them and I love them and they're incredible people and they have God in their hearts, regardless of whether that is expressed through Islam or through Christianity or whatever. God is in their hearts. Now, my friend's family were not extremists. I know most people who are Muslim are not extremists. My friend wore bikinis to the pool too, right? They didn't cover their heads. My friend now is a doctor. She's a very she's awesome. She's a doctor now. So that is what that, and I applaud my mother for that. My mother is a big Republican, and she always believed that we should have freedom of religion, that we should have freedom of choices. And what our beliefs are in our family might not be the same as our neighbor. And that's okay because as long as we're not hurting anybody, as long as we're not infringing on somebody's existence in a negative way, then it's cool. It's all good. It's all groovy, man. Wavy, baby. Like, that's fine. Why are we so arrogant to think that? Why are fundamentalist Christians in this country so arrogant to think that they know what's good for everybody? To me, that's perverted control. Why are you trying to control people you don't know? It's the same thing like when I was growing up and people would get like I talked about this with the shiny happy people. I can't wait to talk to the bolts about this. I would get really weirded out as a kid. I remember this when I would be in like church or youth group or Sunday school and these adults, I was a kid, these adults would get really excited, like salivating at the mouth over the apocalypse. And I remember hoping that they could see it and it was coming soon. And I remember getting really freaked out by that. Like, I don't want to see people hurt. I don't want to see that. I don't want that. I don't want to see that. Like I don't want people to be in pain. I remember thinking that as a kid and looking at these adults thinking, why do you want to see people hurt? Why do you want to see laughing and mocking, ah ha 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 ha, we get to watch them burn. Why do you want to see that? What have these people done to you? These people around the world that you don't even know, that just happen to have a different religion from you because of a different culture. You don't know these people, but you want to watch them burn? Like that's fucked up. That's psychotic. And even as a little kid, I didn't have the right words to say that's sociopathic or that's a sign of a mental disorder, or at the least no empathy, no compassion, no ability to feel empathy. I didn't have those words as a kid, but I was very uncomfortable as a kid. It's like my gut knew that this isn't right. And so I see that with the extreme right, like they relish in hurting other people. They relish, their ego is so fragile that in order to be right in their opinions on God, they want to force people to believe what they believe and the way that they believe it, force people to do that. And those that say no, thank you, they want to physically hurt them. That's not what Jesus taught, bro. That is not what Jesus taught. So even for the extreme right, I don't know what kind of religion you're in, but it ain't the teachings of Jesus. Love each other as I have loved you, and love thy God with all thy heart. Those were the two commandments that Jesus gave. Love each other as I have loved you, and love thy God with all thy heart. Thy God, your God. Seems to me he was implying everyone's got an opinion on God, multiple religions. Just love your God with all your heart and treat each other as I have love each other as I have loved you. Most Christians that I know, fundamentalist Christians, do not behave that way. They do not heed the actual two commandments of Jesus. Those were the actual two commandments of Jesus, and they don't follow it. My mother does. Obviously, my mother followed those two commandments. Some of my friends' parents did growing up because I did have obviously a lot of friends who grew up Presbyterian and, they were very much that way too. But these fundamentalist groups are not that way. They're, in my opinion, they're mistaking their rage and they're projecting their violent tendencies. They're manipulating it through a religion in order to try to get satisfaction from doing these violent things to people. We get to like the homosexual issue, which, Ray Boltz came out of the closet, and that's a huge part of season two. And this has always been weird to me as well, even as a kid, like in the 2000s. Like, when I was a kid, the 90s was a different place. It was more scandalous. But now in 2025, like it's no big deal. Like, who cares what your sexuality is? As long as you are, doing things with an adult with consent, who gives a shit? Like, I don't care what you do in the privacy of your own bedroom. That's not my business. I'm not perverted, right? The only bedroom that's my business is my own. right? I'm not perverted. I'm not a peeping Tom. I don't want to know what you're doing as long as everybody's healthy and happy and there are no children involved. Great. You do you, boo. You do you. You pursue happiness in the way that you see fit. I don't understand, with that being said, why the fundamentalist Christians get so upset about this. Again, why do you care what somebody else is doing in there? Why are you trying to control the essence and nature of someone else? To do that is to try to behave like God. That is black magic, right? Black magic is working against nature, where white magic is working with nature. You're working against it. That's black magic. It's beyond me. Jesus never spoke about it. Stop it. Stop saying the Bible says, the Bible says. Jesus never spoke about it. He said ne'er a thing about it in the Bible. The only place where it is spoken about in the Bible is in regards to Roman law. So by you talking about this and twisting it and saying that it's biblical, you are supporting the law of government, of Roman law. Jesus never said anything about it. I don't think Jesus gave a flying fadoodle. He was more concerned about your own happiness, about dealing with your own suffering as individual humans. He didn't try to control anyone. In fact, in the missing books of the Bible, if you guys remember, in the missing books of the Bible, you get a way cooler Jesus, I will say. And I can't remember which book they speak about this, but there is one book, and you guys, if you remember when we went through put it in the comment section below, and I can't remember which one it is, but they ask Jesus about this idea of divorce. They ask him about all these things, these interpersonal relationships. And if you remember, homosexuality has been around since the beginning of time, you guys. Like during this time, there were definitely openly homosexual people. I mean, during Alexander the Great's reign, which was 300-ish years before, supposedly, according to the mainstream timeline, before the birth of Jesus, Alexander the Great was married to men and women. The Greeks had laws where you could marry men and women could marry women. That was part of Greek law. That was 300 years before Jesus. So this was very much around. And so they're asking Jesus these questions, and Jesus has nothing negative to say about homosexuality, has nothing negative to say about heterosexuality. There is only one form of marriage that Jesus was adamantly against. That was polygamy. There's a whole verses where he goes off on polygamy. That polygamy is an abomination. You know why? Let's think about that. Well, because usually the women involved don't really have much choice. It's a form of, sex trafficking. So it's hurting people. So he spoke out against polygamy. He also said in that same area where they were talking about it that if divorce, like what are the grounds for divorce? Well, he goes simple. If you fall out of love with each other, get divorced. It's fine. So these Christians are wholly mistaken when they say these things because what they're doing is they're supporting Roman law. They're not supporting Jesus' law. And the Romans at this time followed religions like Mithraism. They were pagan, which, whatever, as long as you're not hurting anybody, whatever. But the Christians who are so against these other religions are actually pulling from the Bible where it's talking about Roman law in a government that's pagan. Where Jesus in the Bible never says anything. In the missing books of the Bible, he just says, don't be a polygamist. So why do you care who somebody marries? Why are you trying to control what somebody does in their bedroom? You fucking pervert. You're a pervert. That's disgusting. Ugh, that is disgusting. I don't want to see what you're doing in your bedroom, but I do wish you all the happiness in the world that nobody is being hurt. Which all of my friends, I have friends of all sorts of sexualities, None of them hurt people. It's all with consenting adults. Every single one of my friends and I'm close to in my life, gay, straight, somewhere in between, whatever, every single last one of them is very much against hurting children. Very much against involving that. And that's what we mean about moral compass, right? As long as our moral compass is on the same page, we're good. We're all consenting adults. I am completely straight. I am not attracted to women in the slightest. I can see a pretty woman, acknowledge she's pretty, but I'm not attracted to women at all. I love men. I love men's arm, their chest. I love men. But I have gay friends who know I'm straight. I know they're gay. It doesn't matter because that's not the leading place of our personality, right? I like my friends because of who they are, not because of who they're married to. Oh, I like most of their spouses too, or what they do in their bedroom. I like them for their own unique personalities. And they know I'm straight. I know they're gay. It's cool. So I don't understand why people get so manic about controlling another person, because that is not what this country is founded on. If you want to live in a theocracy, by all means, go right ahead, but it's not going to happen in this country because our Constitution does not allow that. And I'm begging you guys, regardless of what political aisle you're under, I really beg you guys. I know people around my age know the Constitution. I think younger generations weren't taught the Constitution. I would beg you to go read the Constitution. Read it. Read the Declaration of Independence. That is the most important thing that we preserve because that is what allows us to live and let live. That is what allows us to be uniquely ourselves and to experience our own karma and to experience our own beautiful existence on this planet without having the interference of government, of control. Government is uniquely service to self. It's service to self. And so in this country, we try to strip back as much government as possible so we can live in a world that's service to others. Jesus was service to others. So anyway, it's terrifying. Be careful with both political sides, with extremists who want to change the Constitution. Be careful with people who use God as a weapon to weaponize you, to make you feel like you're doing something wrong because they're pulling God into it. There should be a separation of church and state in all governments, in my opinion, so that this type of violence that has happened in our historical past never happens again. Human life is precious. Human life is special. It doesn't matter what that human life believes. It is precious and it needs to be preserved. With that being said, you guys, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. I can't wait to get the bolts on. And yeah, tomorrow we're going to talk about Spencer Pratt. Speaking of human life. All right, you guys, I hope you're having a wonderful day. We'll talk very soon.
Let me show you the sky below.